Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Rugby League Hub podcast, a weekly podcast in which we discuss the goings-on in the rugby league world. Joining me in the studio this week is Ross Williams and Jacob Kilbride. How are we doing today, fellas?
Go mate, how you doing?
Very good, very good.
We'll start it off this week with the review of the weekend's games and start with Australia versus Samoa. Australia winning 46-0, absolutely thrashing the Samoans. Valentine Holmes scoring 5 tries, first player in history to do so. What do we make of the game, fellas?
I'll start off and just pretty much as expected. I think I don't think anyone really expected Australia to lose the quarter final. I'd have liked to see a bit of a closer game. To be honest, I thought Samoa could have had a little bit more for them, but if you look at the stat line, they'd not won in the group stages. They got through with that draw in Scotland, didn't they? So a little bit disappointed from the Samoans, especially not to put a point up. But it was over at half time. It was 30-0, I believe it was. Samoa can take something from it, I guess. The fact that they only conceded 16 in the second half could have been a lot worse. But yeah, pretty much academic from the Aussies, as you'd expect, really. Jacob?
Yeah, I agree, really. Obviously, it's pretty routine, pretty standard from Australia. I think 1 point to me is obviously not conceding a point in the game is obviously a big reflection of their strength in defence. Obviously, they only conceded, I think, 4 it was against England. So, they're certainly a very strong side defensively. I'd expect them to get, obviously, to the final and, probably go on and win the tournament. But, a standard victory against Samoa, who, like you said, Ross, haven't won a game so far in the tournament. Could only draw against Scotland, which probably shows where they're at. And, comfortable for Australia, really.
Yeah, we'll come on to Australia maybe winning the final in a bit, and now we'll move on to the Fiji-New Zealand game, which probably another one of the shocks of the tournament after the Tonga-New Zealand game. Fiji winning 4-2 in that game. Was it the shock of the tournament? Does it outweigh the Tonga defeat?
I don't know about shock of the tournament. I think it was one of the shocks in the history of rugby league, to be honest with you. I mean, first time ever that Tier 1 nations not made it to the semis. We'll go on to New Zealand in depth probably later on, their troubles and what's happened there, but it's just such a massive moment for rugby league and for Fiji especially. To get that victory, obviously a lot of people probably won't have seen it live, being on at 3:30, 4 in the morning, but I think a lot of people in England especially probably woke up that morning and when they were told that Fiji had only scored 4 points, they probably weren't that surprised. But the fact that New Zealand only scored 2, that's I for one I couldn't believe it to start. I had to double check myself. And then watched the game back, and obviously, not a classic, you could say. It wasn't one of the best games you ever watched, but you could tell what it meant and the passion the Fijians threw out. First minute to 80, it was absolutely unbelievable, and it's going to hopefully have some big effects on rugby league going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's obviously a massive result, and considering the dominance of Australia and New Zealand so far, and just international rugby league generally, for one of those to not even make the semis is massive. Obviously, whether it's a new era, as some people are calling it, I'm not too sure. Whether it's just a one-off, and obviously only 2 points in it, so it's not as if they've been thrashed or anything like that. But a massive result, and maybe an indicator of things to come down the line for Fiji and generally in rugby league.
Yeah, it certainly was a shot game and close scoreline. And Tonga, another close scoreline, out beating Lebanon 24-22, a David Fusitu'a double, grabbing them the win. It was a gutsy performance from the Lebanon side, who wasn't tipped for much this tournament, but against Tonga, who were picked as one of the dark horses to surprise a few, it was a really good performance from the Lebanon side, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was outstanding, to be fair. I mean, after you saw, like you mentioned, the Tonga-New Zealand game last week, I think you'd have been hard-pressed to think anything other than Tonga were going to blow them away, really, and what they've shown so far. But the Lebanese are outstanding, and I think if anyone can really take something from that, obviously Lebanon will, but I think England might take something from that as well. Suddenly the England scoring against Lebanon doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too bad at all. The fact that England beat them pretty comfortably. We're playing Tonga next week, and Lebanon pushed Tonga within 2 points in a big quarter final with all the pressure riding on it. Suddenly it doesn't look so bad for England, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I think obviously England got a lot of criticism, didn't they, after that performance against Lebanon, not kicking on in that second half and scoring as many points as they would have liked. But obviously it looks a good win now, considering they went so close against Tonga, who obviously won all of their 3 group games, obviously beating New Zealand. So I think he'll give, as Ross was saying, give England encouragement next week. Obviously, Tonga, pipped as the dark horses. Obviously, they've got quite a few strong players in that team. But I think England will take confidence with that result and make England favourites to go and get the win against Tonga in the semi-final.
And moving on to England, in the last quarter-final, they took on Papua New Guinea, ended up winning 30-odd points to 6. Jermaine McGillivray was at the double again as England crept into the semi-finals. We'll come on to that later. The scoreline kind of glossed what wasn't the best English performance, but we made it through. It's all that matters. What do you make of the game?
It's job done, isn't it? I think that's all I can really say. It's just job done. It's a quarter-final. It's knockout football. It'd have been nice to see some better performances in the group stages, and that's where you kind of need your performances, especially like in the France game, for example, where it didn't really matter results-wise. That's when I'd like to see a better performance. But honestly, in the quarter-final, it'd be nice to see a performance, but we beat them by 30 points. We've got through. We've beaten by 36-6. It's a knockout football. As long as all we had to do was get. I don't care if we're beaten by 1 point. Realistically, it's about getting in that semi-final. We've done that, and I think we tried to. You look at that game. I think we tried things we probably won't do next week, and we certainly won't do in the final to play Australia. Threw the ball back quite a lot. Took some chances, but I don't mind that, to be honest. We got the job done. That's that really. I'm not going to read too much into it, to be honest. The actual performance. Yeah,
it's obviously, I suppose, like Ross was saying, the main thing is just getting through into that semi-final. That's all you really need to do in knockout rugby league. So, all about getting through to that next stage of the competition. I think the one worrying stat was obviously the 56% completion rate, which has obviously been all over social media and things like that. So, it's the performance wasn't great. But I think England can take positives from it. The defensively, they've been very solid this in the World Cup so far. I thought Gareth Widdop did very well, continuing at fullback. And obviously Jermaine McGillivray, I think it was John Wilkin calling the best winger in the world during the BBC coverage. So 2 tries again for him. So I think there's positives, but obviously it's all about getting into that next stage and maybe not as doom and gloom as some people are making out at the moment for England.
Yeah, I think best winger in the world claims, and maybe I think Valentine Holmes might have something to say about that after his performance.
Just the 5 tries.
Just the 5, yeah. But the semis are set up now. Australia taking on Fiji, whereas Tonga take on England for that chance to get into the final. But moving away from last weekend's games now, we'll go in towards a new era of rugby league, we think. We'll start off with New Zealand. There's been quite a few things said about a few comments made by Captain Adam Blur, which I'll play for you now, and then we'll discuss in the studio.
I'm proud, like Kid said, of what we've created. We've been on a really good journey that's changed a lot of things in the Kiwi jersey. We've set some high standards. We've created a great working environment.
And in this interview that we just watched and listened to there, it's quite a laid-back manner. It's an emotional interview from Adam Blur, but, he's laid back, he's got the chewing gum in, and to me it kind of looks like a defeatist attitude. What do you two make of that interview?
I've just listened to that now. Like I say, it's just proud of what they've achieved, and high standards kind of stuck out to me as buzzwords there, and I'm like, it's the New Zealand Kiwis. They've just been beaten in the quarterfinals. It's never happened before. I'm not sure what high standards is really kind of pointing towards, whether that is just your typical kind of post-game spiel to just kind of deflect some attention. I don't know, but I mean, when you really look at it, it's really poor in New Zealand. As much, with all due respect to Fiji, who were excellent on the day, they really were, but New Zealand should not play in a World Cup quarter-final scoring 2 points and not scoring a try. It's not good enough for a nation like that. And so I would expect heads are going to roll after this, probably in the next couple of weeks. And but yeah, I mean, there's been talk about New Zealand for months, hasn't there, leading into this tournament. And like you say, just the laid-back style. It took that interview in with the chewing gum in, like you say. You don't want to say they don't care, but it kind of gives that impression a little bit.
Yeah, and you say it's no disrespect to Fiji, as you said. But one comment he says it's changed a lot of things in the Kiwi jersey. Now, we've had Tamalolo defect to Tonga. We've had the likes of Benji Marshall, who've finished the season outstandingly, not been picked by Kidwell. A lot of New Zealand supporters are growing a bit disgruntled with Kidwell. And do you actually see things changing, Jacob, or do you think they will continue in very much the same vein of New Zealand head coach picks the Sean Johnsons, Samari Martins, even if they haven't had the best seasons? Or do you think it's time, shake it up, get an Aussie coach in, someone else, and just revive this Kiwi side?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it's sort of a turning point, really, where I think this may be, the moment where obviously the New Zealand hierarchy want to, make that change and appoint a different coach and select a different side. Obviously, it's sort of like a breaking point, a turning point, if you like. As Ross was saying, it's never happened before, not getting to a semi-final. So I think they have obviously got to change things. It wasn't too long ago that New Zealand were obviously in the final of Four Nations and, way ahead of England, supposedly. So, I think they've got to make some changes, really, after this tournament. And considering, obviously, the interview we saw with Adam Blair there, it does seem that sort of a bit of a blinkered view. It was some really strange comments in there. So I think they've got to change things around and, you just can't, as Ross was saying, you can't have a quarter-final where you don't score a try against a side like Fiji. So, yeah, definitely changes to come.
So I think the best way to appreciate this is just like, imagine this were England. Imagine England had just played Fiji in that quarter-final and got beat 4-2. Can you imagine the uproar?
There would be a lot of media attention.
And we've not won a World Cup in, 40 years? 40, 50 years, New Zealand won it in, 2008? Yeah. Just less than 10 years ago, they're a top team, they were world number one not a couple of years ago. This is like, as much as England like to think we're probably number two in the world, we probably are number two in the world now, looking at this, but over the last 20, 30 years, we haven't really. In New Zealand, it's been Australia, New Zealand. And yeah, and even if it was us, it'd be carnage, absolute carnage. So definitely things have got to change in my eyes. And Kidwell's, if he doesn't walk himself, I think he's pretty much a dead man walking, isn't he?
Yeah, you mentioned it. They've gone from winning World Cups, Four Nations, to getting knocked out in a quarter-final and getting beat in a group game, which was unheard of back just not even a few years ago, literally last season. He was winning tests, and there's just been a lot of disagreements with specifically Kidwell not picking players. There's Jesse Bromwich, Kevin Proctor, who understandably are banned from the national team for certain events. Yeah. But do you think that it is time that they just relook the whole thing? Or do you think there's only one or two things, There's a lot of talk about England changing up the whole thing, English coach, but that's New Zealand have used that and that's not worked. So you think this links into the whole England debate is when Wayne Bennett, the man for the job, is going national and going with a David Kidwell worth it?
Did Steve McNamara work for us? Realistically, played some alright rugby, didn't we? But we weren't winning World Cups, we weren't winning Four Nations.
I think we can say got us a platform that we can build on with someone else. Yeah. Is that what Kidwell's done with New Zealand? Has he brought them down to a platform maybe from a title challenging side?
Well, just 4 years ago at the last World Cup, I don't think this would have happened. I think you've got to look at it like that. So I think, like I said, there's certainly got to be a change, but is it? I mean, to be honest, I don't know how many other top level New Zealand coaches is there, Kiwi coaches. I mean, a handful maybe, very few. So you probably do. I think they probably will go for an Aussie, and then potentially one of the other Origin coach. Obviously, Mal Meninga's pretty much probably got the Australian job for a very long time, I'd imagine. But yeah, it's tough to say. I think it's still just kind of sinking in what's happened, to be honest. I don't think we'll probably appreciate how big this is for a few weeks yet, because it's just happened. But this is absolutely massive, the fact that they've not made the semis. It's absolutely huge.
Sorry, just to interrupt, I think one of the things to obviously mention as well, obviously it's been very doom and gloom, obviously, with New Zealand, and like you were saying, obviously should be changes and this, that and the other, but I think one of the things to appreciate is the strength for the other sides. I think they've got a lot stronger in recent years, and it's been a lot more competitive, and I think that's something that we should be celebrating, really. Obviously, complain a little bit. Obviously, Australia have been so dominant, and it's been very much Australia, New Zealand, and that's sort of been shaken up now, which I think can only benefit us, the sport really. You're wanting competitive games where you don't wake up and see it's been 50 points to nil in a semi-final, which should be a competitive game. So they've got Ashton Sims and Braden Williams in the squad. So they've got plenty of NRL players in there as well. So I think they've got a lot of good players in the side of Fiji. And, maybe it's a surprising result, certainly, but maybe not as surprising as some other people think. But, I think got to appreciate the competitive nature of the World Cup, really.
Yeah, I think it's a good part. I think we've certainly got to appreciate how good. I don't want to give any disrespect to Fiji. Like you said, they have been fantastic throughout this tournament, and like you mentioned, a couple of players there. I mean, Jared Haynes one of the best players I've ever seen. He's absolutely. He's getting towards the back end of his career now, but he's absolutely phenomenal. Playing in a variety of positions. Origin star. He obviously was a Kangaroo Test international himself. So. Yeah, I mean, it's not as much as it is a terrible result for New Zealand. What a fantastic result for Fiji.
Yeah.
And we do have to applaud that for sure.
And flowing on from that, we can now move on to what has been deemed the new era of rugby league, and more specifically, the new era of international rugby league.
Yeah.
And the likes of Fiji and Tonga getting their own representatives that have been playing in NRL, Super League, have been top-level performers, and then wanting to play for their country.
Yeah.
No longer Australia probably still have a bit of the hold on their players. Fafita's maybe touched on that a little bit and said, we'd rather represent Tonga. But especially with New Zealand not being the well-oiled machine they used to be, can we now see the likes of Fiji and Tonga push forward more than just beating teams in the group stage? Can we see them, will we see them still at this World Cup making a final and pushing for the trophy?
I can't see why not in the future. I think a final might come a little bit too soon from this time. I think England and Australia are going to be a little bit too strong. I'm sure we'll get onto that at the back end of the show. I think a final's a little bit too soon, but I think 4 years down the line, 8 years down the line, I can't see why not, because there's nothing but positivities about the Pacific nations. It's unbelievable when you touch on Fafita, and I think a lot of it is just purely just this newfound, I don't know where they found it from, but it's just this pride in the shirt, this want to represent your heritage and your nation. I don't know if you saw a video of Andrew Fafita about a month ago before the World Cup, where obviously he took quite a lot of flack for his decision, but there was a video of his grandfather when he was told the decision, who he was going to play for in the World Cup, and his grandfather was just absolutely just overwhelmed. He's like this 8-year-old guy, just like in floods of tears because of the decision he's made. And it's things like that. Like, why wouldn't you be proud? You know what I mean? Why can't you take that forward? Why can't players take that forward? Because it means something to them. We mentioned last week about Ireland. How proud that's made them. It's a completely different kettle of fish, but is it really? I think this could have. I know it's a new era is really cliche, but this really could be a bit of a dawn for international rugby league really kind of taking the place it should have been for a long time.
Yeah, no, I could only echo what Ross was saying, really. I think obviously, you get a lot of players obviously switching between, different countries and things like that. So it's obviously nice to see players go into the so-called smaller nations and, making the games a lot more competitive, which we've seen, and hopefully it is a new era of rugby league. I'm not entirely convinced. Obviously, it's obviously one result, obviously, compared to the last 4 or 5 finals, which have obviously been dominated by Australia, England and New Zealand. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think it's certainly to the benefit of the game if we do have a new era, and we could see some of these smaller nations make competitive games. And it would be great to see a Fiji or a Tonga in the final, but I think it, obviously, as Ross was saying, probably comes a bit too soon, and I'm not sure they've got the quality to beat an England or an Australia just yet, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
I think it'd be nice to see Fiji, by the way, rather than
Very much Fiji fans in the room
Yeah.
today. But it's not just the Pacific nations, sort of the typical ones that we think of, the Fijis, the Tongas. I think Lebanon have probably been my surprise package of this World Cup.
Oh, 100%.
I could say Fiji, making it to the semis, that's a surprise package. But if you said to me before this tournament, what's more likely to happen, Fiji in a semi-final or Lebanon doing as well as they did, losing by 2 points in a quarter, I'd probably looked at that Lebanon squad, gone, right, there's 3 recognisable players here at most.
Yep.
Disregard them. But they haven't. They've stuck up. They're a gutsy side, and you've got teams like France who've got a team in the English Super League, and they've been pushing that for a while, and the French national teams kind of jumped back a step, and the Lebanon teams really jumped forward a step, and they've surprised a lot of this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of... I was probably quite naive about Lebanon. I thought, pretty much their destiny was sealed in week 1. They pretty much wrapped up a quarter-final spot by beating France. And I think a lot of people, myself included, put that down to an underperforming French side. But I think that's not giving them respect they deserve, to be honest, because the France then went to play Australia and England and put up pretty good displays, I thought, to be fair. France weren't... I didn't see the France-Lebanon game in week 1, and I just assumed it was just poor France. You saw them 2 weeks after. Yeah, they didn't put 80-minute performances together, but they really weren't that bad. And then, like I say, Lebanon, what they did this weekend, they've just been, like I say, the surprise package. And we had it in the last few years. Scotland, unfortunately, not performed this time around, but getting the result against New Zealand a couple of years ago, they had that. There's some good stories about the USA, for example, back in 2013. They've not performed this time, so they've needed a team to kind of step up. And Lebanon fit the bill, and it's fantastic. And I believe they've organised a friendly with PNG next year in Down Under, which is that's massive, and it's exactly what we need to do. We can't just leave this here now. We can't just stop dead straight after the World Cup and then wait around for another year or two. These teams need to be playing together. And they've said it about Ireland, said it about Wales, Scotland, and it's the same for teams like Lebanon. It's the same for the Pacific nations. I'll probably get onto that as well. Even if it's some kind of tournament for those guys, they need to be playing. They can't just pretty much do what we do. And because we can kind of get away with it, Australia can get away with it, England can get away with it because they're playing competitive all the time. They're playing, obviously, in State of Origin in Australia. We're playing Super League to an high level over here. So you can almost get away with it only playing once every 9 months. It's not great, ideally. We do need an international break, but we can get away with it. But these guys in Lebanon, a lot of them are not going to be playing NRL or Super League every week. So we need to have regular games for these guys. If they're going to kick on, there's going to be any kind of legacy here.
Yeah, you mentioned the tournament there. There is talk. I don't know how much of it is official talk, but there's certainly a lot of social media talk of a South Pacific, Australian, New Zealand tournament with the 2 big sides in, then the Tongas, the Fijis, the Lebanons. Do you think that would be something that could kick on and help bring these sides even further, Jacob? Or
yeah, definitely. I think obviously it's come about quite recently, hasn't it? Because obviously we've seen the success of Lebanon. If Mitchell Moses would have converted, one of his conversions, then it would have been a draw, wouldn't it? So it just shows how far they've come, and I think, like Ross saying, we've got to keep them involved in the game now, and not just wait another 4 years for another World Cup and hope it stays the same, because that potentially won't happen, because obviously you would expect New Zealand to have better funding and different coaches and different players and things like that. So it's vital that we keep them in the game. I'm not sure the logistics of a tournament like that. Hopefully it could work and be successful. But I think it's certainly good to see smaller teams being more competitive, and I think it shows the strength of those sides rather than potentially other sides being weaker, really. So hopefully we see that tournament come to fruition. But we'll have to wait and see on that one, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of the talk is due to New Zealand struggling a bit, but if you think about it, if you strip the side down, you think they've just got a new coach, they've lost the best forward arguably in the world, and in a very important position. If England lost Sean O'Loughlin, we'd probably struggle. We'd probably have someone to fill in that position, but for the leadership qualities he brings.
Yeah.
And then they've lost a solid 6 in Kieran Foran that they've had for the past World Cups that allows a Sean Johnson to go and play his game. Now, Sean Johnson's had to revert back and be that leader, and he's got a very young halfback partner. It's just about rebuilding for New Zealand, I think. I don't think we can forget them.
No.
But certainly I think this new tournament is exciting for that part of the world. I think England might even struggle in the national competitions if this does become a regular thing and the Tongan sides and the Fijian sides start playing more regularly, and England are still playing France in a friendly once a year, twice a year, and beating them 50-odd-0 playing affiliated states. Is there opportunity for a European competition, do you think, or do you think it just have to be a tri-state, sort of a tri-nations between England, France, Scotland, chuck Ireland in there, chuck Wales in there maybe? Do you think that could be something that could come around?
Yeah, I think if this Pacific tournament gets the go-ahead and ends up happening, I think it's probably going to be kind of the kick up the arse that the RFL and the European Federation needs, to be honest. I think the fact that we haven't had a Six Nations for so long, or anything that resembles a Six Nations, I mean, I know they have the European Championships, but realistically, who watches that? Who watches it? A lot of rugby league fans probably don't even know it happened, which is it's sad. You know, it's not right, and it's just not marketed properly and something like that. But the fact that there isn't a Six, I mean, you look at, as much, actually, we never like to bring up Union really, but Union does the Six Nations. They do international rugby very, very well. You know, I live, you know, in a very rugby league centric area. Very few Union clubs around, very few Union fans. I walked into the pub on Saturday night. England versus Australia was on the TV, and the pub was absolutely rammed, and people getting involved. That's rugby union, you know. But they just do international so well. That's in front of 80,000 at Twickenham.
Every international game is a big game.
It's a sellout. Yeah, they sell out every game. Yeah.
Rugby league, you think of an international game and you think,
yeah,
maybe watch that if I've got free time, maybe not. And we'll move on to England now if we're finished with the New Era talk.
Sure.
Don't want to go on that cliche too much, but England, more of a promising talk about this week. Obviously beat Papua New Guinea quite convincingly in the end, but did the scoreline hide the struggles of the game?
I think so, yeah. England, obviously, they definitely struggled, as they have done. They've not really impressed many people so far in the tournament. Obviously, that, as we were saying earlier, 56% completion rate. I think a lot of it was just sloppy play rather than trying to be adventurous or anything like that. I think that you can take positives from it, though. Obviously, only conceding one try. We only conceded 3 against Australia. I think one came in the final 10 minutes where we just... I think it was a throw out wide, an ambitious pass, which was...
Yeah, it's pretty much final minute, I think.
Yeah, intercepted. So I think defensively we can certainly take some positives. And, you know, Jermaine McGilvray played fantastic again. Gareth Widdop played really well at fullback. So interested to see what Wayne Bennett does there, whether he brings Johnny Lomax back in or he keeps the half-back pairing of Brown and Gale and leaves Widdop at fullback. I'm not too sure what he'll do there. I would have thought he'd keep it the same, but yeah, I thought overall, obviously, not good from an attacking point of view. You would have liked to put a few more points on the board and, you know, complete a lot more sets, really, just like back to basics, really. But yeah, I think England can take some positives, and I'd make them favourites against Tonga next weekend.
My big fear really is just don't mess with it now. Please don't start changing it around. Not at a semi-final stage. I mean, he's gone with his halfbacks now for me. If it's not Brown and Gale against Tonga, then I worry a little bit, to be honest.
And I don't think Gale and Widdop really worked too well in the first couple of games.
No, and like I say, Widdop's done very well at fullback, so yeah. I wouldn't want to change that, to be honest. I guess the big discussion's at 9, really. I mean, I was calling last week for Roby to start, and I think my thoughts are pretty much justified watching the game, to be honest. It wasn't one of Ocean's best, was it?
Well, Kevin Brown obviously a doubt for the Tongan game after having a head clash very early in the game that Wayne Bennett was only brought to the attention of by one of the non-playing England players showing him on social media.
That was a bit crazy, wasn't it? That was a bit crazy.
Replays apparently not working in the coaching room, but certainly would be a miss really for the Tongan game, I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if he's well, he should start.
Yeah. For me. But as you said, the big talking point is the number 9 position.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rumbling, specifically on my Twitter feed, mainly Saints bias, calling for James Roby to start, but a lot of England supporters in general saying Josh Hodgson isn't a starting hooker.
I can't not agree, to be honest with you, after watching it. He's a good player, he's a top player. Everyone knows that. He was a former Dalian Hooker of the Year, I believe. You know what I mean? He's got all the awards, accomplishments, what have you. I just don't think he fits. I think possibly 2 or 3 years ago, I think he may have fit better when he was probably a hooker player. I think probably things he's picked up at Canberra, just doesn't quite translate for me. And James Roby's been absolutely phenomenal form. I think a lot of people thought he was gone. Probably last year. And then the way he's come back and he's playing like he was playing 7-8 years ago. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And how he can not have more game time in this team? We just look so much more fluid and so much better when he's there. And if we are going to rip Tonga to shreds next week, which is doubtful, but if we are, it's going to be through him at acting half, 100%.
Yeah, I agree. I think with Hodgson, I think he's been brought in as more of a kicking type hooker at 9. Obviously, another kicker in there, but I think Inga just looks slow at the moment, just going forward, and I don't know. It just feels a little bit one-paced and no real creativity. Whereas I think Roby just give you that extra step out of dummy half and just sprinting forward and creating opportunities. So I think Roby should come in. I think he'll keep Hodgson in the team. I think he likes Hodgson. He's played in almost all the games, I think. And I don't think he's particularly a fan of Roby, but I hope that changes. But I'm not sure if it will, to be honest.
The thing I found with Hodgson is he's quite a controlling 9. I think when he's on he likes to take control of everything, kind of thing, which is understandable. That is kind of in the job description, really. But I think something kind of takes a little bit too much control, and when he's off, like he has been off, it affects the entire team. Then I think he's just got to trust his halves a little bit more.
And you said it there, he's more of a kicking half, but you look at the 4 players in the spine of the team. You've got Gareth Widdop, who's an exceptional kicker. His running play has really come on at fullback, I think, but you watch him for St George and some of the kicks he puts in, incredible. The kick he put in, I think it was for McGilvery or for Watkins' his try this weekend, was great. And then you look at the half-back partnership, you've got Kevin Brown, who likes to kick, primarily a kicker, not normally run anymore. Luke Gale, domestically, probably one of the best running halves in the competition. Internationally, we haven't quite seen that side of him. Yeah. So I think what you say about the kicking is a good point. I think we do need James Roby in there to just spark up the team and then free up the other two. But would you keep on the bench? We've got a plethora of options for a utility player. We've got 5 halfbacks brought to the competition. We've got Ratchford, we've got Williams. But would Josh Hodgson be your man for that fourth bench spot behind the forwards?
I think he'd be on my bench purely because he's very good defensively. As much as you talk about his go forward, in defence he is very good, and we're going to come up against some very, very, very big sets now, especially this week against Tonga. Luckily the game's in New Zealand, so it's probably not going to be as hot as it could have been in certain places. Because I think in the heat, I think it'd be very tough, probably for both sides. To be fair, such a big set. So defensively, it does give you that option. Say we did start with Roby. I don't think he will. I think he will start with Hodgson. But say we did start with Roby, you can bring Hodgson after half hour, and he just gives you that effort and that energy in defence, which would help a lot, I think, because I think Tonga are going to come at us pretty fast early doors. And I just don't know really at this stage. Ratchford, Williams, I'm not entirely sure where they fit if you put them in. If you put them on the bench now, I think it'll just disrupt more than anything. I think if you were to throw Williams on the bench and then put him on after 35 minutes or half time, it just disrupts your half-back partnership again. Halfway through a semi-final, when it's probably going to be tight, I don't know. You can justify that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Andrew summed it up quite well. Obviously, you've got 4 kickers in the side, and it's just unneeded, really. Yeah. I think, especially when you've got Widdop, who's obviously half-back playing at full-back, obviously with the Lomax injury, you've got sort of a third half-back in there, and then you've got Hodgson as well. I think it just makes the England game slow, and I think that's where you'd need someone like Roby to come in, obviously off the back of a fantastic season with St Helens. So I'd start Roby. I don't think Wayne Bennett will, but interesting, but remains to be seen. I think, like Ross was saying as well about Williams and Ratchford, I don't think they'll come into the side. I'm not sure they've played a bit part so far in the tournament. I think obviously it'd disrupt things if they came in, and it was especially at halfback where it's such a a position where you need to get some sort of fluency in there. I can't see either of those two coming in. But I'd like to keep things the same. But I'm not sure what Wayne Bennett will do if Kevin Brown isn't fit to play.
I think
how that may change things.
Sorry. On a slightly different, I think one of the key things this week for England is we need to get that left edge firing. it's been, I mean, being a Castleford fan all this year, our left edge has been absolutely, and with Gale, was that third man in, they were phenomenal this year in attack, and I wondered, I was hoping that was going to translate into the England side, to be honest, and it hasn't. I mean, we spoke in length about John Bateman last week and the fact he's not realistically a centre, which doesn't help things, don't get me wrong, but you've still got a man with incredible international scoring record, Ryan Hall out there. I think it's more, I mean, this has been a bit presumptuous in saying we're going to beat Tonga, but I think we need to get the Aussies, realistically Aussies, sorry Fiji, we need to get them fearing the left side, I think, for that final, because the right side has been phenomenal. You know, McGillvray, I mean, he's got every single headline he deserves. He's been absolutely fantastic. Like I say, world's best winger potentially. People have been saying this week. And also Watkins was fantastic this week. He was absolutely brilliant. And that's the Callum Watkins England's been wanting for a long time, I think. We've seen it for Leeds, you know, how good he is in the centre. But those two are going to genuinely frighten the Aussies, I think. But if the left edge isn't working, they can focus on the right edge and sort that out. And then what we're really left with, we need to make sure the left side's in some kind of form, I think, going into a potential final.
And you mentioned the word fear there. Do you think this England team carries a fear factor with it now? You mentioned the right edge. You know, players probably are looking at Watkins and McGillvray and thinking, blimey, this is going to be a match-up now. And, you know, the Australians have probably looked at Ryan Hall in the past and thought, you know, big, strong. We've seen what he's done to Billy Slater when he broke his collarbone when he was scoring a try once.
Yeah.
But with John Bateman on his inside, he's very much stick it up your jumper.
He's just a bit
Go
isolated,
yourself.
isn't he? Yeah.
Do you think this England team can provide the fear to not just Australia, but to Tonga? Do you think Tonga are going to come in thinking, you know, our outside backs are amazing. All we need to do is get it to that side. Do you think England can put the fear into the eyes?
In terms of the fear against Tonga, I don't necessarily think it's going to be the backs. I think because it's the first game this tournament where people are expecting that England are going to be overmatched in the middle. And if England can make a big statement in the first 10-15 minutes, with the likes of Sam Burgess back in, you know, Tom Burgess, James Graham, you know, big fellas themselves, you know what I mean? They're going to run it in hard. It's a semi-final football. I think if they make a big statement in that first 10 minutes, then that's going to change it. That's going to sort out the entire game. I think if we can be somewhat on top of them up the middle early on, then I think it's realistic we could run away with it. I really do think that. Like I say, the outside backs are very good for Tonga, aren't they? Look at Fanua and guys like that. But yeah, I think up the middle is certainly where this week's going to be won. And then if we can then get over Tonga in terms of us forwards, Australia, they're going to look at that and think they're quite a pack. You know what I mean? They're going to have to adjust for that. So if they're then thinking about the forwards, that's where our main threat is going to be. That opens up your wide men for the potential final. So
yeah, I think one player that we didn't mention in that obviously discussion about the pack is Alex Walmsley as well. Obviously came off a bench and scored a fantastic try against PNG.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's had another fantastic season with St Helens. I think top meter maker in Super League. Is that right? Yeah. So obviously a great option to have on the bench. Someone who can really threaten any defence, I think. So he's certainly a fantastic player and someone that you'd always want to bring off the bench. You just size and power, and you know can finish as well, get some tries, and yeah.
It certainly is a mouth-watering clash, not just this semi-final, the other one as well.
Yeah.
And we'll just finish off this week's podcast with our predictions for the semi-finals. We'll start off with the Australia-Fiji match.
Right.
So we'll go for a score. You want to score as well, lads? And what you think the match will play out like. Jacob, we'll come to you first.
Australia-Fiji, yeah. I'd say Australia 40, Fiji 10.
Interesting, very interesting. Ross?
Put us on the spot here. I want to say something, but I'll go realistic. I think Australia, I don't think they'll score 40. I think Australia will probably score, I'll go 32-6 Australia.
I'm actually going to go for a closer game. Call me an idiot, but I think...
An optimist, I like it.
An optimist, there we go, better word. we've got the likes of Vunivalu who've been doing it for Melbourne all year, and I just think he's been playing against the Australian players all year and he's still dominated. I think they could not cause a shock and beat them. I wouldn't be amazingly surprised if they did. It would certainly be a shock, but I think Australia aren't going to run away with it as people may think. So I'm going to go for Australia around 36 and then Fiji to get 16. Australia 36.
Oh, no, it's not that close then.
Not that close.
I thought you were going to say 24-24.
No, not getting that carried away with the new era just yet. As for England and Tonga, probably a bit harder to predict. No one really knows which way it's going to go. Ross, we'll get you first on this one.
Yeah, based off what I was saying about earlier about the forward pack, and this is kind of assuming that we do come out firing. And by the time Walmsley comes on, like 20-25 minutes in, we're in a pretty good spot and they can carry it on. If there's one thing England can do, it's score points. I think we've proven that. And, the fact that we got 56% possession against PNG, who was supposed to be a real banana skin, and still score 36 points proves that, if we can get a completion up to 70-80%, then how many points can we score? So I will go for 38-20.
Very interesting match. Jacob?
I'm not sure it'll be as high scoring as that. I'll go England 30, Tonga 12.
Yeah, that's more what I was saying. I'm thinking it's going to be quite a defensive match, really. I think both teams have got the capacity to score points, but I think the energy that's going to be absorbed in that middle is going to be absolutely huge. So I'm going to go for a 24-16 scoreline. We'll have our further written predictions out on the website this week. You can find that at therugbyleaguehub.com. Any comments or feedback is more than welcome. You can find us on Twitter at the Rugby League Hub. This will be on YouTube and SoundCloud. Leave a like and a comment below. Thanks very much to Ross and Jacob for joining me this week. It's been a pleasure, lads.
No worries, thank you.
And we'll see you the same time next week.